Sir, as reported earlier, this text contains 31 characters. There is a hurricane situation in and around Florida. There is an order. In order to grasp the scale of the situation, it is important to note that the evacuation order concerns approximately 5.5 million individuals. President Biden, who is not frequently present in Washington and seems to have a preference for avoiding duty, especially when it comes to announcing his schedule, typically opts for vacation. However, even he acknowledges the significance of the current matter at hand. This is evident as President Biden took to the podium after the departure of his bodyguard. He is currently delivering a statement on the issue. Allow me to recall the name of the hurricane afflicting Florida, where the evacuation of 5.5 million people has been directed. I will share this with you. Hurricane Milton. Obviously, the severity of this hurricane is immense. Going to be a really tough time, just like in those American disaster movies. The footage also shows that everything is obviously ready to fly, to be affected even more. Did they evacuate all those people, 5.5 million people? Did they get out of Florida? What happens next? We will see these things. The hurricane state is not something we know much about. It is not a weather event that we can compare to storms, but as far as it is understood. Now, the President of the United States, Biden, is with those concerned, and there is another person right behind him. I think he is the head of the relevant unit in the US. On the left side, there is a live image of a hotel. The strength of the wind can already be understood from the swaying of the trees there. From time to time, we can also see that it is raining in a way that cannot be seen at all. Here, the President of the United States, and I think the American public, along with him, are now sharing information about where the first impact of the storm, or rather the hurricane, will be and how long it will last. I haven't seen too many American presidents on live TV like this, at least not so far, talking about disaster stories. Let's see if this upcoming event will be as significant as the previous one. What the American president is implying here is whether the weather event will be substantial enough to impact at least 5.5 million people and potentially endanger lives. We will witness each of these aspects play out. At the moment, we have a detailed report regarding the events that have transpired thus far, primarily up until this hour during the daytime. What is being discussed is a story that delves into the specifics of why even the President of the United States found it necessary to address the public on camera today. In a prior statement, the President revealed that the revised text contains approximately 705 characters. This is a matter of life and death and warn the areas at risk. Let's take a look, sir.
Tampa Bay in the United States is bracing for disaster. Hurricane Milton, which has been upgraded to a Category 5 hurricane, is approaching step by step. This is how the spiraling hurricane was seen from space. The state of Florida, which was hit by Hurricane Helen 2 weeks ago, has not yet recovered from the disaster that killed more than 200 people. Now the danger is greater. It is stated that Hurricane Milton could be the worst of the last century. U.S. President Joe Biden warned residents in areas where evacuation orders have been issued.
We continue to prepare for Hurricane Milton, which could be one of the worst storms to hit Florida in a century. If you are under an evacuation order, you must evacuate immediately. This is a matter of life and death.
Milton is expected to hit the west coast of Florida, Tampa Bay. More than 5.5 million people have been asked to leave coastal areas and the flight has begun. Long lines of cars formed on the highways, gas stations ran out of fuel, streets and alleys were empty. One of the evacuees includes a U.S. Air Force base situated approximately 6.4 kilometers in the southwest direction of Tampa. In order to ensure safety, all the personnel and tanks present at the base have been relocated to an undisclosed destination. 9 African penguins living in an aquarium were also forcibly relocated. Their living quarters on the first floor were moved to higher and safer ground. Floridians took careful measures before departing their residences. They secured the doors and windows by boarding them up. Despite the alerts, some individuals chose not to evacuate and instead chose to accumulate food supplies.
Upon receiving the evacuation order, I instantly felt relieved, for I live in a towering structure nestled in the bustling center of the metropolis. At present, I find myself in an advantageous state, completely unaffected by the prevailing situation.
I have enough resources to stay, but it's risky.
If you get an evacuation order in Florida and you don't evacuate, that means you could very possibly die. There have been many people who stayed in their homes and they drowned. It is not worth it. Better to leave the city.
Due to the hurricane, U.S. President Biden postponed his trips to Germany and Angola. A state of emergency was declared in Florida even before the hurricane hit. It is estimated that some areas could be under 3 to 4.5 meters of water due to the hurricane.